It's always a pleasure when I run into young people who actually listen to the radio, and certainly WHYY must be your parents, right?
Well, yes, but we love to listen to WHYY. And my mom is a donor. She supports WHYY.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yes. So I love radio. I don't know if I'm gonna go into radio exactly, but I do appreciate it and I do listen. Hello, my name is Alyssa Threadgill, and I'm a student journalist and video production intern for Black Women in Radio. My guest for today is a thriving Black woman with a passion for broadcast. She is a graduate of Dartmouth College, as well as Northwestern University's Law School and Columbia's Journalism School. She is also the former chair of the journalism department at Temple University's Klein College of Media and Communication. Last year, she was the recipient of Temple's highest teaching recognition, the Great Teacher Award. In journalism, her research interests include the integration of new media technologies in race studies, as well as diversity issues in media. I'm incredibly excited to introduce Professor Karen M. Turner. All right, Professor Turner, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I wanted to tell you this morning I was registering for classes and I was a little disappointed because your race and racism in the news course filled up and I didn't get the chance to join. But I'm glad I can talk to you today about some of the issues going on and hopefully some of the things that class would have discussed. But I wanted to ask you first, I know your passion for media started when you were little and you wanted to be a sports broadcaster. Mm-hmm. So what prompted your interest in race studies and diversity issues in the media?
I think it's just life, to be honest. One of the things, and I have mentioned on several occasions that I wanted to be a sports reporter, and didn't see any role models. So, now we talk a lot about the importance of representation. And at that time, when I was coming up, there was very little representation at all. If you're talking about in journalism, you're talking about the folks who we saw in media, it wasn't me. And I remember, what was it, the Mickey Mouse Club, and they had someone named Karen on there, and Karen was white and blonde, but she had my name. And being young, I didn't really realize the fact that we were different. As I grew up, I understood that, and I think kind of subtly I recognized that Karen and I were different. But times are different. We still have the double glass ceiling when you're talking about women, but things certainly are better when you're talking about representation. Just my interest, as I said, is life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's wonderful. I mean, you didn't see yourself in the Mickey Mouse Club, but it's good to kind of see where things have changed, at least a little bit. There still are some issues right now in certain markets, and a lot of people are trying to fill in little areas where they could throw in a person of color just to make it look diverse, and it's not. But
it's window dressing. And the other thing, hair. Hair is an issue for us.
My hair right now.
and deciding, I want to do broadcast. Can I be my authentic self? And I think cable certainly is much more open to that authenticity. I don't think you quite see it as much on the networks just yet, but there's so many opportunities to do your own thing. And so I'm seeing so much more natural hair, and I think that's wonderful. If that's the way you want to go, I think you need to have that opportunity. and not always have to have straight hair. And that means for a lot of people, they're wearing weaves or wigs or what have you. And for some people, that's not the way they want to go. And so if that's closed off to you and you want to do broadcast, it's unfortunate that we're talking not about your ability as a journalist, a quality journalist, but we're talking about, something as ridiculous as your hair. But they also are very mindful of the fact that you have audiences who might be offended by a different look. Things are getting better. I mean, there was a time when if you had an ethnic last name, you changed your name. Someone like Stephanopoulos would never have been able to be on broadcast, right? In years past, so those kinds of things are changing.
Yeah, and what we consider to be professional has completely changed, because if my hair isn't straight and if I'm not dressed a certain way, then someone, I would hope somebody a little bit more old-fashioned might not think that I look like a professional journalist. But right now it's more so about the quality of my speech and my journalism and what I'm putting out. And, whether or not people can take me seriously, I feel like it's starting to become their own problem, because I know that I'm going to put my best foot forward. So I think at this point, it really just matters how you feel about yourself. And, I'd never go on TV wearing sweatpants or something, but I'd always try to be as put together as I can. But I really wanted to talk to you, since we were discussing it. Why do you think it is important to have diversity in media now? Diversity in media now more than ever, especially since we've had so many conflicts with race over the past few years and more discussions of race every time there is any sort of incident involving, unfortunately, it's a lot of African American people facing conflict. And I tend to see more African American journalists covering those specific stories. And it's nice to see your own people talking about your own community's issues. But why do you think that's important, that we have those people portraying those stories?
Well, I think it's a sensitivity that you have being a person of color. But I don't want to let newsrooms off, because there are a lot of places in this country where you don't have diversity for a variety of reasons. And so I don't think the ability and the interest and sensitivity to tell those stories should only fall on the people who are from those communities or have familiarity with those communities. It's something that everyone should be able to tell. It's no different than, gender stories. There's no reason why men can't tell those stories as well. I think when you have the diversity in the newsroom, you certainly have a variety of voices. And if you happen to be someone who's not part of a particular community, you have people in your newsroom who you can check with. Hopefully there are editors there who can, who are aware, who are sensitive and can help, and then your colleagues. But I think it is important to have folks of color telling those stories, but it shouldn't just be them. It's not just our issues. Or just when I say our issues as folks of color, it is all of our issues. And so we all need to be able to tell those stories. I would not want someone to close me off from telling a story about, a business story or something like that, because it's felt that, you don't really know about this. No, I get up to speed, especially if I'm a general assignment reporter. We all need to be able to tell those stories.
Absolutely. I think if someone has a background in a certain topic, they should be able to share that knowledge with someone else, because our whole industry is on learning new things and reporting about it. So I think more and more people should be able to put themselves out there and share different perspectives even, because not everybody's Black and not everybody has those experiences. But if we have some sort of collaborative effort for everyone to become, I don't want to say woke because that's a buzzword now, but for everyone to gain the knowledge that they need to understand other people, I think that's very important right now.
And it's more than just Black, white, gender. There's age differences. I mean, our experiences determine how we see the world. We may have some similarities, but we're going to have differences based on where we were raised, based on, our religion, our gender, our race. There's so many biracial, I want to say children, but I won't say children, but biracial journalists. If we're talking about journalists who are getting jobs and who are now telling stories and are familiar faces, and their experiences obviously would be very different. And so having diversity is just so very important, because we're not a monolith. I mean, the U.S. is not a monolith. We all bring things. We have similarities. We have more than others, but yes, we're unique as well. And that we need to keep in mind.
I agree. So I want to talk about Black women in radio and your experience being a part of it. So how does a community like this help you as a media professional, but also help you, I guess, understand our current media sphere and how there's still a lack of diversity, but how does a community like this help you feel more comfortable, make connections with other media professionals? How has that been for you?
I've been inspired, to be honest with you. I first got into radio, I was thinking back on this, and I've always been fascinated with radio. And when I was in college, that was my first experience. I worked for a show. It was like the Black show called The Black Side. And we came on WDCR radio at Dartmouth College. And it was from midnight to 2 a.m. And I believe I had Thursday nights. And I was the only woman for a while who was on Black Side. Obviously, there were African-American men. I was the only woman. And that was my first experience. And I really enjoyed it. I used to play Donna Summer's Love to Love You, Baby. And I would get calls like, what are you doing up there? That's a 15-minute record. But it was just, it was like really fun to talk on the radio. And then I had a chance to work, and I worked briefly when I was in law school at a radio station in Gary, Indiana. And I realized I had a good ear for, I guess at the time, maybe they called it breaking records. I wouldn't always follow the playlist. And if there were songs that I really liked, I put them on. I heard about it, of course. But I still did it. And that was fun. And then when I decided that I wanted to really pursue journalism, it was amazing to me when I look back on it now. I started focusing on television. And, you never know why things happen. And my first opportunity in terms of broadcast came in radio. And I guess maybe at that time I was like, because everybody was going into TV, I realized how much I loved radio. And so when I got out of Columbia, I worked for a radio company and worked in a couple of different markets. And then actually where I think I really matured as a broadcaster was working in Cincinnati for WIZF The Wiz. It was the station was changing formats. It was interurban radio. They were changing formats They were an urban station, and I was really challenged by the general managers. I was there as their news director. And what I loved about that was the opportunity to really connect with the community through a show that I had created called Straight Talk. And Straight Talk at first was a tape show, and then it became Straight Talk Live. And when it became Straight Talk Live, it was a 2-hour live show. And I just felt that I was making such a contribution to the community. And if you had said to me when I first started doing 2 hours of talk, live, can you do this? And when he said this to me, I was like, I'm not sure. And I found out that the adrenaline that I would feel, I just absolutely loved it. And so today, I had an opportunity to do some work at WHYY after I had started teaching full-time at Temple. And what I liked about that as well was being able to be on air live and the challenges of live radio. And so all of the ladies who I have met, obviously, through Black Women in Radio, most of them, as I understand, are doing music. But they're still live, and what goes with the live, and just because they're playing music, they're putting in little tidbits of information for their communities. And I love it that so many of them, they stuck with it. It wasn't always easy, and sometimes you had to pick up and move, and sometimes you had setbacks. But I think everyone who you talk to just absolutely are glad that they stuck with radio and just love radio. And in some circles, radio's not hip. But it's there, and it has reinvented itself. Now people are into podcasts, and a lot of people are getting into podcasts. But, it was constantly reinventing itself. And so it'll be interesting to see where it goes next.
So I think radio is very hip. I listen to the radio, and I grew up listening to WHYY. I wonder if I ever heard you and just didn't know.
It's always a pleasure when I run into young people who actually listen to the radio, and certainly WHYY must be your parents, right?
Well, yes, but we love to listen to WHYY. And my mom is a donor. She supports WHYY.
Wonderful, yes. Wonderful.
Yes. So I love radio. I don't know if I'm gonna go into radio exactly, but I do appreciate it and I do listen.
Well, but with public radio, and you're not going to get rich. With public radio, what I like about it, and students, I used to teach a radio course at Temple. It'd be great if we could resurrect it one day. Is the long format that you have to tell stories, especially if you're on the news side. You can delve into things a little more deeply. And I think, considering that alternate facts are out there, that it's important that there be a medium through which people truly can get true facts.
I agree. And at least be able to show both sides. I find that even listening to NPR, you get both sides. So I feel like people tend to trust NPR just because you get those varying perspectives. Even when people can call in and share different things, I've heard over the years, usually around election day, people will call in and they'll have people that might be a little more conservative, people that are more liberal, and they have a good balance so that people can resonate with those viewpoints. They're like, okay, the radio station has me covered. I can listen to this and not get too riled up, hopefully. So I think I agree. Radio is a good medium for everything.
And usually we talk about both sides, but oftentimes there are more than just two sides. There's that nuance. And especially if you're thinking about reproductive rights, there are people who are pro-choice, but perhaps for themselves they might not want to get an abortion. But that doesn't mean that they don't feel that women have a right to choose. And so there's the nuance there, and that needs to be covered more.
Yeah, I don't even think I've heard anybody express that view in public like that. And yeah, no one talks about that. It's either yes or no, and that's what we focus on. Mm-hmm. Either for us or you're against us, and there's no in between. But there is in a lot of different situations. So
absolutely.
More coverage, more viewpoints, more diversity. That's what we need. But yes, so I wanted to talk to you about your career as a whole. As of right now, I'm curious to know if there's anything you wish you knew when you were in college, maybe when you were working at those radio stations, or even if you were just in your 20s, I'm in my 20s. Do you think there would have been any little pieces of knowledge that you wish you knew that could have helped you in the long run, or just things you've learned along the way about maybe trusting your journey and throughout your career?
Probably not sweating the small stuff. Also, stop planning so much. You know, I still do this somewhat. But, you know, you get knocked around in life enough to know that it's not all in your control, right? You can control what you can control, and that is it. I probably would have been maybe a little more adventurous. I felt that coming out of college, you know, I had to go to a grad program. So I went to law school, and then, you know, I worked, and then I realized, and I'm glad I did this, that I still had that burning to go into journalism. And I remember talking to friends and saying, I'm going back to school. I never thought I would go back and get another graduate degree. I'm going to pursue what is in my heart. And I'm glad I did. And so oftentimes when I talk to parents or even students, I say, you know what? I think it's unfortunate that there's an expectation that at age 20, you know what you want to be doing at age 49. And that just isn't so, because you're going to have so many life experiences that, you know, you may want to explore some other things, and that is okay. And I think we need to determine success for ourselves and not have other people or allow other people to determine what is success. I think if I were to go back, one thing I would have done would be to have joined the Peace Corps. I'd thought about it, but it just seemed that time wasn't right. When I came out of college, that would have been the time to do it. But all of my friends were going to grad program, and I felt that I had to do the same thing. And that's one experience that I would have liked to have had. And that's probably why I have taken three groups of students to South Africa, because that's kind of my way of giving the Temple students an opportunity to do international reporting. I think I've been to South Africa now 6 times. And it's a fascinating country to me. And the first time I went in 2004, I went to Cape Town. And I said, I want Temple students, especially the students who are in my race and racism in the news class, because I had started teaching that in 1997. I said, I really want them to have this opportunity to experience a country that was so close to just getting out of apartheid. And I think that there are some lessons that we could learn that we're still struggling with here. I mean, they are too as well, but at least they had Truth and Reconciliation Committee or commission, and they recognized that that was something that was important. We have not been to the point where we even want to talk in a very nuanced and authentic way about our racial history. It's like, let's just sweep it under the rug, and at some point issues will be resolved. No, they won't. We're still living with the remnants of slavery and Jim Crow. And if we don't deal with that, we aren't going to continue to make the progress. And now you've got the pushback happening in terms of, the alt-right, as they call it. And then this conversation about alternative facts. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff going on now. It's happened in the past, and we don't know our history well to know that we can come out of this, but we all have a role to play. And that's where, and I guess that's why I think journalism is so very important. And this generation of journalists, you and your peers, you are the ones who are going to help us get through this. And so a program like the program that we have in journalism, I think is just so very important, because I think we give you the skills, not only the hands-on skills, but the critical thinking skills to be able to usher us into what hopefully will be, a wonderful place that's multicultural and appreciated. As President, who was it? Barack Obama talked about more perfect union, and that's what I think I expect from your generation of journalists.
Yes, I hope to contribute to that as much as I can. And it's so interesting to me. I wanted to ask you, this wasn't a planned question, I just thought of it now. For the race and racism course, I wonder, how much do you cover, well, Temple's journalism department, it's not the most diverse. I have wonderful professors. I'm really enjoying my time. But I wonder, how much does the course cover, well, the racial issues in our own community at Temple? Because we have an area where Temple's kind of planted in the middle of a massive neighborhood that's predominantly Black, and we have a lot of gentrification. It's no secret there's a ton of gentrification in our area. How much do you discuss those issues in the community? Because I feel like a lot of people don't think about it, especially students, because I come from the suburbs of Philadelphia. I'm not super immersed in the culture, the North Philadelphia culture, and oftentimes we're told to stay away from it. But it's hard to hear that as a Black person, because when I go home, people are like, oh, you go to Temple, be careful, don't go off campus. That's the number one thing. It always comes from white people. And I always think, and I always ask, did you go to Temple? Because it's a different experience being on the outside of it than actually going and seeing, hey, they made a whole university in the middle of these people's community, and they probably aren't thrilled with it, that there's all these kids and staff everywhere. So do you discuss that in the course, and why do you think it's so important for everyone to understand that we have these issues around us every day in our community?
Well, what we do cover is how things got to be how they are. Okay, because you had model cities programs in the 1960s, you've had redlining, all of that, and oftentimes students aren't exposed to that. And so, yes, we do talk about why sometimes you might walk out of if you're living someplace in North Philadelphia, you walk outside, there might be trash there. Why is that? Why aren't they getting those services? So yeah, we do talk about that. I think it's, and I do that honestly, not just in the race class, I bring it into all of the classes. I figure out a way to do that because we all are there. I think that on the part of some students, they recognize that there is a community in North Philadelphia, that people get up and go to work, that people have children, that they have the same aspirations for their kids as your parents have for you. And so, there are so many similarities, but I think sometimes we get just, I don't know, we lose sight of that. And so I do try to, and maybe it is humanizing, understanding that they are just like us, and we shouldn't be just running to our cars and escaping. And so as I said, the way that I try to bring about that awareness is to talk about how North Philadelphia really didn't get the funds that it should have gotten, and it was ignored. And anytime, you're not going to have regular trash pickup, or residents can't get loans to improve their homes because of issues like redlining, it's going to happen like that. And there will be dilapidated homes and areas. And now, you're right, gentrification, people are picking up like really inexpensive properties and turning them into $300,000 like walk-ups. It's amazing to me how much a lot of the housing costs now. And the question is, what's happening to the residents? Yes, they do have some affordable housing going up, but there are people who have been displaced.
Yes.
And two, there's always a story about Temple students who trashed the neighborhood. And that's absolutely awful. I think there was something in maybe the Inquirer or the TV stations carried a story at the end of the summer, the beginning of the fall term. And they had photos and video of trash just sitting on the sidewalk in a neighborhood, and that these students, where they had lived. And that's just inappropriate. I don't care what you think about the neighborhood. You don't trash it like that. That's being disrespectful to yourself as well. It's not just to the neighborhood. You're being disrespectful to yourself.
Yes. I mean, aside from the fact that, I don't live on campus anymore. I started commuting this year. But just for the fact that people consider Temple housing and off-campus housing to be like disposable almost. So it's like, oh, I don't live here. I'm going back to the suburbs or wherever, another state, so I don't have to worry about it anymore. But it's like, no, because it's like you wouldn't do that at your own house with your parents.
That's right.
Like, why would you want to make your area, your neighborhood look horrible? And it's so sad because it happens every time school ends, and people just leave like bulk trash a lot of the times, like couches, chairs, like things that it's just, why would you leave it? Because like part of me is like, okay, did you think someone was just gonna take it? But it's like, no one wants your junky stuff.
That's right. And it's left there. And so the residents have to get rid of it. I know the university's aware, and I think they did hire like a company to clean up. But it's awful. It's awful. It adds to a terrible reputation that we have with our neighbors. And they are our neighbors. And if I may say to you, one of my pet peeves, since we're talking about our presence in North Philadelphia, if you look at, okay, you're familiar with Diamond and you know where Tyler is, right? And there's the, I guess the loading dock that's there that faces the neighborhood. I am constantly complaining to anybody who will listen to me that it's at Tyler. Why can't the students at least maybe do, I don't know, creative graffiti or do some kind of design at that loading dock? Because the loading dock is ugly. And you can't change the building because they shouldn't have built it that way, but they did. So you have to deal with what you have. And if you live on Diamond and you live across the street from that loading dock, that's what you see. They could spruce it up. And I've talked to several people, and now that we're talking, I'll have to revisit my phone calls because that is something that has bothered me for years.
Yeah. And I know there's enough creative people there that they could collaborate and put up something really beautiful and
maybe even do it with the neighborhood, like with some of the neighbors and the kids. I mean, they could turn it into like a community project. As I'm saying this, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, maybe that'll be my next pitch.
Maybe, yeah. I would love to see that. That would be wonderful and make the whole area look really nice and bridge the gap between
absolutely
Apple and North Philadelphia. I love it. I think that should be a big project for everyone.
Well, we'll have to talk after this interview.
Yes. So, okay, my final question for you, just to tie everything together. Do you have any advice for young Black women in media who are making their way in the industry? Anything that you think we should know since we are the next generation?
Be well read. Be determined. Whatever it is you're focusing on, because like I said, I recognize that you may change course and that's okay, but don't let anyone tell you no. If they tell you no, you think, oh, okay, that's I need to figure out how to make this a yes. If it is your passion, and that's why I constantly tell students to think about, like, what are you passionate about? Because if you're passionate about it, you'll hang in there. And so if it is your passion, don't let anybody say no or deter you from pursuing that. You may find you think you have the dream job. It may not be the dream job. Okay, so then you move on. Okay, but at least you don't want to get older and say, I wish I had it, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to go forward. Networking, of course, is important. And I find that usually if you're not asking someone for a job, but you just want to get information, people will tell you whatever. But, they're glad to share tidbits of their wisdom with you. If you're coming to them and they don't know you and you're just immediately letting them know you want a job, sometimes that can be a turnoff. But if you're picking people's brains, they love to talk to, young people. And those are people you keep in touch with. Just because they may not have a job for you right then, they may know somebody who knows somebody, and that might be down the road, right? But you don't know where your opportunities will come from. When I ended up working in Gary, Indiana, I was hired by someone who went to my college, who I really didn't know well, an alum, and he was a part owner of Interurban Broadcasting. Oh, and so that was kind of like my first professional job. And then when I worked at WIZF The Wiz in Cincinnati, I ran into him it was a recruiting fair. And he told me that the company was opening, they had just bought a station in Erlanger, Kentucky, which is right outside of Cincinnati, and they were looking to staff it. And would I be interested in coming in as the news director? And so, that was someone who I knew from college, or the college connection, because we weren't on campus the same time. But he was an alum, and I had kept in touch with him, every now and then. And then, like I said, when we ran into one another, and I must say, in terms of my radio career, WIZF The Wiz, with all the issues that we may have had in terms of, financial issues with the company, I found that to be one of the most satisfying jobs because I really felt that I made a difference in that community. And so you never know where opportunities will come from. I was open to it. And that's why I'd say, you don't want to burn bridges. And you don't want to just come to people when you need a letter of recommendation or whatever. Most of your professors, most of the people will write those letters. But it's like, it would have been nice had they kind of kept in touch as, when they left my class, when they left college. 5 years later, you're asking for a letter of recommendation and nobody has heard from you. It's just important. Those people who you click with, definitely keep in touch with them.
I just thought of a few different professors I've had that would be great to keep in touch with, that I have talked to, because I've been lucky enough to have a few repeat professors. Mm-hmm. And that's great with Temple too. They're people with multiple different skill sets that they can share. And yeah, that's really important to me, especially since Temple has such a broad span of alumni, professors that have careers that have spanned over the years. And I really do try to gather up as much knowledge as I can while I'm still at school. And I think that's great advice. I'll definitely take that because, I'm a junior. So
yeah. It's and there's so many people that, you said how you're meeting various women through Black Women in Radio. Keep in touch, check in, ask for advice. And it doesn't mean you have to take everybody's advice, but these are people who've had different experiences, and then you just kind of weigh things.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, that was all my questions for you.
Okay. Thank you. We're gonna have to meet. You're gonna have to come by my office sometime, and we're gonna have to meet. And I do offer the Race and Racism in the News in the summer. I'm going to be offering it in the summer. So I don't know if you take summer classes. Obviously, it's going to be online, but that might be an opportunity if you were. Are you on the wait? Did you get on the wait list?
I put myself on the wait list. It's me and I think 12 other people. I'm not sure.
Oh, no, really?
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's going to be a space for me because there were people that registered yesterday that couldn't get in. And there weren't, it's all for the, I believe it's the diversity and inclusion credit.
Okay.
And there's your course and the gender and American mass media course that are being offered, but that's it. Nothing else is.
Oh, really?
I think a lot of people are just trying to get that credit. Unfortunately, I really wanted to take the course and get the credit.
Yeah.
But it looks like I have to take gender and mass media, but if I have room for electives, I will take your class. Yeah,
I do. And I always have students who drop out, but unfortunately, you don't know. I write to the students. I explain to them how I teach the class because I do it in a way where all the students are anonymous to one another.
Oh.
And that's the way I've been teaching it since '97. Only I know the identity of the students. And so I challenge you to communicate with one another without knowing anything about, the characteristics of the person who you're communicating with or with the other members of the class. Because I think sometimes if we know someone is male or white or Asian or whatever, all of those stereotypes and biases that we have in our heads that we know we need to work on still enter our minds and we make certain judgments. And so by stripping that away, hopefully you know better about why you think about things, and also you're open to hearing from other people.
Okay. Wait, how did you teach that in the 90s when it wasn't online?
Oh, it's always been online.
You had online classes?
I was one of the first online professors at Temple in 1997. It was rudimentary. Obviously the technology has changed. I had a webmaster to help me with the class. It's been much easier since we have these learning management systems like Canvas, but we did it. We did it.
Wow. That's so interesting. I never even thought about online classes before COVID. Like
Yeah.
I had a few in high school, but they weren't really online because we would meet one day a week.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, I never even thought about when that could have started. That's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yep. I guess it was in 98, no, 96. A call came out from the then provost encouraging proposals, people to write proposals for courses. And I came up with this one and started teaching it in 1997.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're a pioneer of the course.
Yeah. I do a little bit of writing about, teaching folks online and that kind of thing.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Professor Turner, for taking the time to talk with me. I hope everyone enjoyed watching. And yes, please, oh my goodness, I lost my train of thought. Please go to blackwomeninradio.com for more information about our organization. Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you.